The world chronology is being taught today is actually a Christian chronology. They think that the God has created this entire universe in somewhere 404. So they don't have any vision beyond 4000 BC. But why Christians have contracted to 4000 BC? Because they had a one blind belief that whenever the Anno Mundi completes 6000 years, the deluge will come and entire world will be destroyed. But that didn't happen. So now they have to, instead of correcting the blind belief, they corrected the chronology, actually contracted or did a fraud in the chronology and reduced 2000 years of the whatever the concept they have. Sabhayai Namaha. Whenever we call about the cradle of civilization, this is the modern terminology, but we have etad desha prasutasya sakashad agrajanmanah swam swam charitram shiksheran prithivyam sarvamanavaha. That was the real concept of the cradle of civilization, that was Bharat, Bharatvarsh. So quickly, we'll just go through why chronology is very important, because chronology is the backbone of history, linguistics, even all subjects like archaeoastronomy, archaeology, even the carbon dating, archaeogenetics, any subject which depends on the chronology for the research and everything. So the chronology is the backbone. So that is very, very important. These are the ancient civilizations: Bharatvarsh, Greek, Persian, Sumerian, Egyptian, Assyrian, even Scythian, Aratta. They actually Shakas are part of Indian civilization, but the Central Asia and Chinese. These are the main ancient civilizations. How the world chronology has been reconciled after 17th century. Now that is a single pillar edifice. First AD has been considered as the sheet anchor of the world chronology. This, I say, it's a blunder, a mistake, or a Christian fraud. Due to that, entire the all civilizations lost their traditional chronology. How that I am going to explain it. The world chronology is being taught today is actually a Christian chronology. They have they think that the God has created this entire universe in somewhere 404. So they don't have any vision beyond 4000 BC. So that's why. But whether 4004 was the history, no. Prior to 17th or even 500 AD, the Anno Mundi, the epoch of creation used to come in somewhere 6000 BC. And even today, the Byzantine, the data epoch of creation is somewhere 7,500 years, means 5,509. But why Christians have contracted to 4000 BC? Because they had a one blind belief that whenever the Anno Mundi completes 6,000 years, the deluge will come and entire world will be destroyed. But that didn't happen. So now they have to, instead of correcting the blind belief, they corrected the chronology, actually contracted or did a fraud in the chronology and reduced 2000 years of the whatever the concept they had. Then, after 17th century, another the Christians did Anno Domini, Anno Incarnation. They consider as a one epoch. It's okay. Anno Incarnation, I'm not going to into the historicity of Jesus. I'm saying the 42nd regnal year of Augustus. Augustus was a historic person. He was a king of Rome. So 42nd regnal year. Now, Anno Domini, it's a just Easter calculus introduced by Dionysius Exiguus. Now, Dionysius Exiguus, he equated Anno Diocletian. The Diocletian era 249 was equal to Anno Domini 533. Okay, but the same Dionysius Exiguus, he wrote a letter to Petronius, and he is actually writing the Anno Incarnation date as 802. It means he himself has never said Anno Domini is equal to Anno Incarnation. It means the birth, Jesus' birth. So it is true, it is not identical, but it's a mistake they considered Anno Domini and Anno Incarnation is equal. Now, these are the two blunders committed by the Christian historians. That's why I reject that first AD does not deserve to be sheet anchor of world chronology. Why? Because the Exiguus never ever claimed that Anno Incarnation is equal to Anno Domini. So that is the first blunder. Second, what they did, Diocletian era, Martyrs era, both were two different epochs. Even some papyrus documents in Egypt, they have both dates mentioned differently. So actually, the Diocletian era, Martyrs era has been considered as identical. These are the error. And I don't know whether you have ever heard of Anno confusion, that in the Rome, when the Julian calendar was introduced, since they were following lunisolar calendar, they are not able to find out when the full moon Purnima कब है, अमावस्या कब है, कुछ पता नहीं चल रहा था. So that's why they called it Anno confusion. So these same Christians created a lot of confusion in the chronology after 17th century. So let us explore what is our traditional chronology from the Bharatvarsh first. I have, while exploring the antiquity of Indian civilization, I have relied on more archaeoastronomy, that is the pre-Siddhantic calendar and Siddhantic calendar. Our Siddhantic calendar has more than almost 13,500 to 6,700 BC. That is the Vedanga Jyotisha calendar. 6, 7, 7, 8 onwards, we are following the Surya Siddhanta. Asmin Kritayugasyante Sarve Madhyagata Graha. This is the epoch taken by the Mayasura, and it cannot be back calculated. If you are thinking that somebody, Indians astronomer back calculate, is impossible. Otherwise, he must know that delta T correction and the gravity related all effects on the mean motions and the motions of various planets. So it is actually personal observation and this conjunction, because the conditions are sun should be in the first degree of it, the 360 degree. So this is the, and all 5 planet conjunction can occur once in a 400 years or 500 years. So even you take some, because I didn't go into ice age, because in ice age there would be only one season, either harsh winter or mild winter. So civilizational evolution starts only when monsoons become regular in India, and southwest monsoon became regular in India only after 16,000 BC. So I have calculated after there is only one date possible, that is 22nd February 6778 BC, and that was the day was Sunday. This way, weekday also we have introduced to the world. From that day onwards, we still, our all inscriptions, our historical document followed considering the 22nd February 6778 BC as a first day, as a Sunday. So based on that, I have gone beyond, because Siddhantic astronomy starts somewhere 8,800 years ago, 6778 BC. Prior to that, I have studied the Ashwini Suktas of Rig Veda in other, and all Vedas talk about Sharad Ritu, Jivema Sharadha Shatam. So the year, the new year used to comment in Rigvedic era from the autumnal equinox. Jivema, more than 100 references in entire Vedic, post-Vedic literature. Sharad Ritu used to be the beginning of the new year during the Rigvedic era. Then you find out the autumnal equinox occurring at Ashwini, it goes back to 13,500 BC. That was the where we have Vedic Vedanga Jyotisha Yuga calendar begin, that one. Then the Siddhantic astronomy starts from the 778. This is our calendrical continuity. Then if you reconcile Ashwini, thereafter Mrigashiradi, the Orion, what Balagangadhar Tilak, he wrote a book, and why we call Agrayana for the Mrigashira. This was the first time we made a 28 nakshatra list starting from Mrigashira, somewhere 11,200 BCE. That was the beginning of our Vaivaswata Manu's timeline. And that was winter solstice was at Mrigashira. Then after 1,000 years, this 1,000 years, that Satra, Naimisharanya, 1,000 years of Satra Yajna occurred this 11,200 to 10,200 BC, and they observed shifting of equinox or that winter solstice from Mrigashira to Rohini. So all the references in Aitareya Brahmana, all other are actually they are referring to this celestial event, the shifting of equinox from Mrigashira to Rohini. Then Atharva Vedas Nakshatra Sukta talks about all Kritika, the 28 nakshatras. Now you have to look at the winter solstice Kritika, that is 9,200 BC. So that's why all 4 Vedas finally compiled around not later than 9,000 BC. Then our final list, now we stopped. Why to revise the nakshatra list after every 1,000 years? When winter solstice shifted to Ashwini, 7,322 BC, we fixed the entire zodiac to 27. We dropped one nakshatra, because dividing 360 by 27 is more, we will get very, without any fraction, 13.2, 20 minutes, 13 degrees and 20 minutes. So that without any fractions. So we have gone for the 27, and as well as the sidereal motion is also 27.36 days. for the moon. And then it comes to the Mayasura. He said that no, we should not follow this 5 year based yuga and having the intercalation. Let us go back to he introduced the Jovian cycle of 12 years. This is how our Kumbh Mela of 12 years, and we all intercalation based on 12 years started from Siddhanta Jyotisha. This is how, based on the calendrical and the continuity and the archaeoastronomical study, the timeline can be fixed. Early Vedic era, somewhere 14,000 BC it began, because 13,500 fixed by the Vasishta and Vishwamitra, who were contemporary of Trishanku, and that was the era when the Vishwamitra Menaka had a daughter, Shakuntala. Then Shakuntala, Dushyanta, and Bharat. This is how our nation got the name of Bharatvarsh from there onwards. Then finally, the Vedas were compiled somewhere 11,000 to 10,500 BC. Thereafter, the Yuga actually it's a cycle in a calendar. It's not anything, some celestial event or I'm not going into those details how the Yuga cycles have been enlarged. Because after introduction of Siddhanta Jyotisha, the rishis needed a longer yuga. So that's why they took 12 as a unit, so they said 1200. Then thereafter enlarged to 12,000. Thereafter they multiplied 12,000 by 360, that become 43 lakhs 20,000 as a lot Chatur Yuga. But those are astronomically cycles. We made it to have an accurate calculations in the calendar. But our historical timeline is up to Siddhantic Jyotisha. We followed 5-year Yuga and 20-year Chatur Yuga. After that, we followed 1200 Yuga. That's why Treta Yuga has only 1200 years. So Ramayana occurred somewhere 5, 6, 7, 70. Because last century of Treta Yuga, you have to fix the first in your calendrical continuity and fix the timeline. And exactly if you do the sea level simulations, the Sri Lanka was not even an island if you go back to 6000 BC or 6500 BC. After 6200 BC, due to the meltwater pulse 1C, the sea level suddenly rose 7 to 8 meters. That time, the area between Dhanushkodi and Talaimanar started submerged by sea during high tide. During Ramayana period, the Ramasena, the Vanarsena, they just land filling. They just fill the with the rocks or mud or even sand or trees. So they just raise the land level by 1 meter, so that they can have the land route to the Sri Lanka, because strategically they needed, they're invading the Sri Lanka. You have to have a logistic support from Rameshwaram. And the Mahabharata is the Dwapara Yuga at 2400 years, because the Yuga cycle has been enhanced to 12,000 and the differential duration. So this is then the Kali Yuga is still continuing, because again our Yuga cycles have been revised to 43 lakhs 20,000 years. That's why Kali Yuga is still continuing. And we'll go to this is the one calendrical continuity evidence, archaeoastronomical evidence. Now let us go to the total purely the sea level rise related evidence in the Tamil history. Tamil history taught 3 Sangam period. The entire chronology has been given by the Nakkirar in his commentary written on Irayana Ragapporal. First Sangam period, the Rishi Agastya, who wrote Vedic Suktas as well as the Tamil grammar, Agasthyam, he flourished around 11,226. That is the exact timeline what actually has been recorded in the Tamil history. So this 4,400 years, that time Pandyans had their capital Ten Madurai. That was the old Madurai. And around 6,800 BCE, the Ten Madurai was submerged by sea. Now Pandya shifted their capital to Kavatapuram. That's why this 3,700 years, the Kavatapuram was the capital. And Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana mentions Kavatapuram as the Pandyan capital. That's why the Ramayana era has to be fixed during the second Sangam period. Pandyam, Kavate, the Sugriva actually giving the direction to the Vanarasena while searching Sita. So at that time, he's actually mentioning the Kavatapuram as the capital of Pandyans. So then third Sangam period, when the Pandyan capital was shifted to the modern Madurai. This is how total 10,000 years of history of Pandyans, starting from Rishi Agastya to till the end of third Sangam period. Modern historians just fix this ending of third Sangam somewhere first century bis first AD. That is totally another chronological error in dating of Buddha 1308 years. That's why you may be finding the difference of the 1300 years. Then one more Sukta in Rig Veda, Ashwa Sukta. It is very interesting. It is talking about 34 rips of Ashwa. The Chatur Trimshad Vajino Deva Bandhor Vakri Rashvasya Swadhitis Samiti. So it is actually talking about an Ashwa having 34 ribs. But whatever the Central Asian horses are 36 ribs. And Hiranyashringa. I don't know whether unicorn, all Greek historians mention that unicorn was found only in India. Many Greek historians have mentioned. And Hiranyashringa, Tavashringani, this is mentioned. Sayanacharya, while commenting on that, since horse cannot have any horn, so that's why he translated the Tavakeshani. But Shringani cannot be translated at Keshani. So that's why and even later what happened, we have banned the Ashwamedha. Actually, it is forbidden after this Ramayana era. Why? Because that Ashwa became extinct. Because the 34 ribs Ashwa was very, very sacred during the Rigvedic period, and that actually it's a rare animal. Even during the Rigvedic period, Jaimini Ashwamedha, it clearly mentioned that somebody has to actually steal that Ashwa from the Mandhata's his kingdom. Now, if you say one Equus sivalensis, this is the Shivalik horse. And archaeologically proven, this horse was really originated in India and became extinct around 8000 BC. This is the archaeologist estimate. Maybe around 10,000 BC or 8,000 or 6,000 BC. And the fossils are found even Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. So this was the Ashwa was mentioned in Rig Veda. It's not that Central Asian Ashwa, we did not claim that that Ashwa was mentioned in Rig Veda. That's why Vedas have to be dated before extinction of Equus sevalensis, the Shivalik horse. Now, let us explore the Greek civilizational chronology. This is the chronology. I said our chronology has to go back to more than 10,000 or 11,000 BC for the Rig Veda. Even let us do Rig Veda, the Greek civilization, that Atlantis city was submerged by sea somewhere 10,000 BC. The Plato says that 9,000 years before his lifetime. The Christian historians rejected because they think that 4000 BC only Earth has been created, the city can't be created. That's why they said it's a mythology. Then the Greek historians visited in India, Megasthenes and Aryana, they mentioned that the Dionysus and Bacchus, starting from there to Sandrocotus, the Chandragupta and Alexander's timeline, they give 6,421 years. You have to simply add 6,000, around 7,000 BC. The Greek historians are mentioning that Dionysus or Bacchus, the Baalbek temple in Lebanon, so is dedicated to this Bacchus or Dionysus. So Dionysus has to be dated somewhere 7,000 BC. And the Thema Mundi, it's an astrological chart of the most ancient astrological chart of Hellenistic astronomy, and it actually indicates vernal equinox, the occurrence of vernal equinox at Cancer. So if you date it, it goes back to 6500 BC. And even Greek tradition, there was 4 yugas. That one golden age ended around 6700. Actually, they gave an astronomical reference regarding the ending of Silver Age. The Taurus and Scorpio, these were the 2 equinoxes. Taurus was vernal and the Scorpio was the autumnal equinox. They changed this Gemini and Sagittarius. So 3777 BCE, the vernal equinox shifted to Taurus and the autumnal to Scorpio. And then Bronze Age and Heroic Age, these have been mentioned in Greek civilization. And the Anatolian civilization comes out with this. One interest, if you see the priest head found with the Shikha in Anatolia, that is the Göbekli Tepe, Nevali Kori, and Karahan Tepe. These are the 3 very famous archaeological sites have been dated to somewhere 10,000 to 9,000 BC. Anatolian and Greek were almost, they were extension to each other. Then if you go Persian civilization, the historiography is Avesta, Firdausi, Shahnama, and the Persian literature. And everything has been rejected as a mythology. According to them, Ahur Mazdas and Keyumar, they date around 14,000 BC, equal to the Indian timeline. Then Jamshed, his descendant, then Faridun. Thereafter, there is the Kayanian dynasty. This Kayanin kings have been mentioned in Avesta. So all these this Kayanin dynasties have been mentioned in the Avesta, but the modern historians never, because they can't be dated. That's why they simply rejected entire chronology of Persia. Right now, before Achaemenid Empire, there is nothing. Persia never existed as per there. Either Sumerians or Babylonians have ruled over the Persia, but present history, we don't have any trace of Zoroastrianism before Achaemenid Empire. Why? Because we have rejected the chronology. But as per the Greek tradition, Zarathustra, one who wrote the, actually compiled the entire Avesta, he lived around 7000 BC. It is actually 6000 years before Plato or other. They have actually they gave that. There is another Zarathustra too. He lived 100 years before Achaemenid Empire, who actually revived the Zoroastrianism. He didn't compile. So this is the difference. And then Aratta kings. Arattas are well known. I will explain who are Arattas. There is a mention in Bodhayana Shrota Sutra, even Mahabharata also. Arattas were and Scythians, both were lived together and probably they have a common origin. And the one Aratta king actually defeated the Persian king and extended it. That Ariana mentioned, that area was actually, and today Iran got the name also from Arattas only. And the Iranian legends, king actually celebrated Nowruz around 2000 years before. Then the Sumerian civilization, we have this Babyloniaca is the Berosus. He wrote somewhere closer to the Alexander's timeline. And we have numerous kings list found in Ur 3. Their dating also almost goes back to 10,000 BC. And the 10 Chaldean kings ruled over the Ur somewhere 7,000 to 6,600. These are the many dynasties. So what I'm just indicating that the even ancient civilization had their own chronology, even going back to somewhere Holocene period. Egyptian civilization, we have the Manethos book who wrote Egyptian history during the Alexander. I took only the historian's text who wrote before the advent of Christianity. Otherwise, after that, everything has been corrupted. Even culture, the way Mithraism has been corrupted into the entire Roman culture. They corrupted and even adopted that winter solstice. Actually, Mithra's birthday has been converted into the Christian Jesus birthday. This is the 10,000 to 8,000 BC is the demigods and the Egyptian gods timeline. Actually, gods were once upon a time they were great social leaders or the kings. Later, over a period, even today, we worship many gods. They were actually once upon a time historical persons. They contributed a lot. That's why they attained the divine status. वो हमारे लिए आराध्य भी हुए. Then the Sams, there is some Sam descendant Mesoram has migrated to Egypt. So that's why we call Misr, that Egypt, that comes from this name. And I will tell you who has to be identified as Sam. Then Menes, he was the first descendant. So the first dynasty history should start from the 6000 BC onwards. So I'll just skip. And the Assyrian civilization, there are numerous Assyrian king lists are available. The earliest list, it refers to 17 kings, somewhere 6,200. Then we have Adamu was the second king. What I did, I am identifying him as the Adam of the Bible, because Bible follows the Assyrian history. So the Bible chronology is related to Assyrian chronology. And one king, Ushpia, he actually founded one city, Assur, somewhere 5440 BC, and he started one calendar, Assyrian calendar. So this is how, this is the Assyrian chronology also goes back to beyond 6000 BC. And Scythia, and these are actually Shakas and Arattas, they started migrating from India and the eastern Iran to East Europe. So their civilization has its own chronology, and naturally during the Avestan time, Arattas and Shakas actually defeated the Persians and they took over northern Persia. This is the history of the Scythians, and there is a book Tarikh-e Sistan that is even today available, and it talks about that one Gurshasp, he founded one capital Zaran 400 years before the birth of Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad. So the chronological history was always beyond 4000 BC. Chinese civilization, this is a Shiben, it is the earliest Chinese text. It gives Chinese history starts only around closer to 4000 BC. And Yellow Emperor and Yellow Emperor's grandson was probably a contemporary of Yudhishthira, the Mahabharata. And Mahabharata talks about that the Chinese kings sent tribute or presents or some gifts to Yudhishthira. From Aratta in the west and up to Chinese in the east, that was the influence of the Indian civilization that time. We just study the history written by the historian before the advent of Christianity and the historians who wrote about history after Christianity. There is a huge difference in the chronology. Why? Because these are the four: Herodotus, Hecataeus, Manetho, Berosus. These are the historians who wrote the world history before the advent of Christianity. All civilization followed their own chronology because reconciliation of world chronology was not our that time, because every civilization followed their own chronology. They never tried to reconcile at that time. And the problem was Bible, because you have to reconcile Egyptian, because Egyptian kings have been mentioned, Sumerians and the Assyrian kings. So they have to reconcile the chronology. Now what they did, the Sam was the ancestor of Menes. What they did, no, is not a Sam, he is a Ham, son of No, because they know only No from the Bible. Since they rejected the entire Persian history, actually Sam was a Persian, and his descendant are they migrated to Egyptian. In a way, I can say extension of Persian civilization to Egypt. And this event occurred somewhere 8000 to 7000 BC, that Mesoram, the descendant of Sam, he migrated to Egypt, and that actually the Menes was the first king of Egypt who founded first dynasty. So we can say Persian, extension of Persian civilization. Then another thing, the Sumerian flood has been mistakenly identified as a biblical flood. Every flood is limited to its own geography. Like Manu, the flood during the Manu flood is related to the Indian chronology. You can't fix Manu's flood in the biblical chronology. Similarly, Sumerian flood is nothing to do with the biblical flood. The Persian Gulf was very fertile land. It was not a gulf if you go back to 8000 BC. That was actually all the Iraqi rivers used to come. It's a good delta region and very excellent place for the agriculture. But after 8000 BC, due to rise of the sea level entered that area. Then the people who were living that area, they migrated to the Iraq and they founded the Sumerian civilization. So I will tell you who were they. But instead of identifying this biblical flood occurred somewhere 3000 BC or 3500 BC, that was only the river flood of the Iraq. So the problem is, again, the problem is with the European academicians, they were by birth Christians. They were faithful academicians. The problem is with that one. So we have to actually get out of this hypnotic influence of the Christian chronology. And actually the biblical chronology is only the chronology of Assyrians. And Adamu, the second king, and he had one is Eve and another wife. Egyptians actually claim their descent from another wife of Adam. And what happened after 200, 500 AD? Now 200 years have been they actually deleted. They shifted Anno Mundi from 5500 or 6000 to 4000 BC. After this, now they started rejecting the Greek civilization at all, because Greeks talk about somewhere 10,000 BC, the Atlantis city was submerged by sea. So now it is impossible because the earth never existed as per there. So the great scientist like Isaac Newton, what he says, the Greek antiquities are full of poetic fictions because the Greeks wrote nothing in prose. It means if you write in verse, then it's a mythology. If you write in prose, it's a history. So this, the level of the intellectual, or I can say it is actually intellectual dishonesty, or he is not a scientist. this kind of a statements, and they rejected entire Greek chronology. The problem is Greeks are all converted to Christianity. Now nobody is there to reclaim their original history. Same thing with the Egypt also. Now, after 1784, now another new theory has been evolved, Aryan invasion theory, based on wild linguistic speculations. Because the Filippo Sassetti, he came somewhere 16th, end of the 16th century. Thereafter, they started identifying some Sanskrit words in the Latin and the Greek. Now they started speculating somebody migrated from west to east. Why not east to west? Nobody has questioned because they were the rulers. Now, the Indian Persian traditional history has been rejected beyond 15,000 BC based on this linguistic evidence, whatever they call it. It's actually a speculation or mythical speculations. Now, all assumptions are established by these are all European academics. Now, everybody talks about give me the archaeological evidence, but all these have been established before even advent of the modern archaeology. Now they are just supporting with the archaeology to do it. So this is the kind of the childish behavior of the European academicians. Now, real why Bharatvarsh is the cradle of civilization is actually the chronology of the out of India migration. So I actually mapped how the out of India, because once you are talking about history, you have to give a timeline. If you say somebody has migrated out of India, when, what time? So first is the Danans. Danans were the first settlers of Greek and Anatolia. And the Dananvars were not Danavas. During the Indra Vritra, during the Rigvedic period, that is the Deva Yuga, it is somewhere 14,000 BC, as per my the archaeoastronomy based evidences. At that time, Danavas migrated towards west. Then, probably the Gobekli Tepe and that Karahan Tepe, whatever the archaeological we find up, the archaeological sites have been dated to 10,000 BC, probably related to these Denans. Then Asuras, the Deva Asuras are also they had a Danava legacy, but there was a war between Indra and Shambhara during the Rigvedic period when Rigveda was compiling. So that time Indra and Devas have comprehensively defeated the Asuras, and they forced Asuras forced to migrate towards Persia. And these Asuras had Asura Veda. The way Devas had Vedas, that's why Madhukaitabhas wanted to steal the Vedas. Why? There was some intellectual war was going on. They wanted to establish Asura Veda is much superior than that. So in that conflict, so this Asura Veda and the same Sanskrit, probably they had a little loose grammar because Helayo, Heraya iti, generally in our text we ridicule the Sanskrit of the Asuras, but it was only Sanskrit. The same Asura Veda was transformed and recompiled by Zoroaster into Avesta. And he introduced monotheism. Otherwise, it was a polytheism only. Then the Egyptian kings, who were the same Asuras who migrated to Persia and remigrated from Persia to Egypt. This is how the Indian civilization migration towards Egypt. Then the Sindh region, the Matsyas and the people living during that. Matsyas are not fish. Even a Matsya is a rishi for a Rigveda mantra. It's a name of. Later we thought Matsyavatara. A king of Matsya Janapada, he saved Vaivaswata Manu, who was ruling in Saurashtra during the flood. The flood was actually the Kashmir Valley was it's a glacial lake. Once, due to probably an asteroid or a comet hit, the Baramulla Pass was opened up, and the entire water out of Kashmir Valley has came out, and then the Sindh and Gujarat was severely flooded. This was the flood during the Vaivaswata Manu's time. And that in Sumerians, they talk about Ononos. Even today, the Jhulelal, उनको वरुण देवता का वो अवतार मानते. Varuna was supreme god of the Matsyas and the Sindhis. The Ononos is the first progenitor of Sumerian civilization. These Matsyas and Ononos, that Varuna worshippers, they migrated. So just Yavana migration, Shaka, Scythian. And this is how the Kalamukha Asurat, Kalami people are the origin. This Herodotus mentions that Kalami people are the originators of the Jew, their progenitors of the Jews. This is how the entire, and even the Britons also, they were the originated from Scythians, Hittites, and Germans are from the, since the why Hitler called himself Aryan. It's not Aryan. This is Aryana, that Arata migrations. Thank you.